Dr. Catherine, Julie, I welcome each one of you. And before we get started, I always like to thank Dr. Wasabi, Ecdf, for giving us this platform time and again and making us think, brainstorm, and come back with a vision, with the past learnings, and what are we going to do in the future. So if you're joining us now, we are live from Ecdf, Bangalore, and we are going to talk about what it has been like for a closure on childhood, what it has been like not having school suddenly, and what have educators done to make sure that the childhood is retained, and what are we going to do when the schools are opening up. In some of the countries, still they aren't, like us in India. So once again, my name is Simran Balani. I welcome each one of you, and to all my panelists, a very warm welcome. And a big thank you to Dr. Wasabi. Now, before we get started with the evening, and I know we all are having our thoughts penned down and we have made our decks or we made our points, let's take 2 minutes to talk about this wonderful organization, Ecdf. What are we here for today and what is our mission? And there is a huge award function coming up towards the end of October. So allow me to share my screen and let's talk 2 minutes about Ecdf. I hope this is visible. All right, so take a minute to know us better. We are Early Child Development Forum, and we are a global platform for education leaders, educators, edupreneurs, parents, stakeholders. But I would add a few more things. We are also a global platform for budding educationists, students who are doing their specialization in education, because there is a lot that is to be learned from a forum like Ecdf. All right, so we launched in 2018 and we are an initiative of D.N. Acharya Foundation for Children and Women Welfare. To know more about us and know more about our vision, please do visit our website. And we basically have come together, all of us, under the leadership of Dr. Wasabi, to empower educators, parents, children, and other stakeholders. And in real terms, we have not taken a pause just because there was a closure. In fact, we've done more training programs, more meaningful contribution and giving back to the society. And we basically focus on empowering children, facilitators, parents, very important because we believe parents are partners and stakeholders. And here are some of our events that I'm showcasing. We do a lot of training programs. We do a lot of webinars where we bring together like-minded, meaningful educators who want to share what are their points. I'm sorry. And we also talked about parenting. And that was such a wonderful thing where we were talking about positive parenting. We did a lot of webinars about social-emotional learning for parents, for educators, and for children. And this is our quarterly magazine called as ED Clan. And if you want to become a member and want to subscribe to this, do visit our website. There are really insightful articles from, again, a large panel of global educators. And here is the core team. So it's Dr. Wasabi right at the center, in the heart of it, who keeps us all motivated and makes us think each and every day. And then we have zonal head. We have international wing, which is taken care by Dr. Catherine. And that's me, Simran Balani. And Dr. Sue. And we have Ajit Balan, Sana Fatima, Sonia Kular, and Malaysia. Sarah, 1 second. Yes, I'm sorry. My child just walked in on me. Okay. And these are some of our webinars. And some of the webinars are facing challenges together, awareness of autism, and how to stimulate child development through creative learning at home, a very favorite topic of mine, future-proofing your child. And we had amazing first global online conclave, about 100 plus educators. And we go back and we started talking about NEP, how it's going to redefine the preschools, parenting in pandemic. Tea with Teachers was again a very, very nice initiative on the Teachers' Day. And here we go, more on what the events we do. This is so super. And then this is the time that we give back to the society, the initiative that we do for children empowerment projects. And to know more about how you can partner to this cause, please visit our website, ecdfforum.org. We are looking for members who want to contribute in every way, and no way is small. So do reach out to us on these various channels, and you can contact us directly as well. Thank you very much for listening to us about what Ecdf is. Now we come back to why we are here today. We want to talk about what has been going on in last 1.5 years, 2 years, and in some countries we are still in the same zone where the schools are not open. And if you go back and rewind a year back, it was completely a kind of a sudden stop, a thing that though we are in the terms of digitalization and globalization, nobody predicted this for the education sector, especially for the early years, right? And none of us were prepared. Now, did we do our best? Absolutely, we did. But what was it like to be in that kind of a phase? What did it feel like? So let's start with our panelists. And I welcome Dr. Sue. Kindly introduce yourself and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon from England, everybody. I'm Dr. Sue Allingham. I am a self-employed early years consultant, author and trainer, having come out of a long line of teaching and working for local authorities. I now work for myself and develop my own thinking. Simran, your question then is really interesting. The impact on education and missing things in life. When you're only between birth and 5 years old, it's only a matter of months. And during those months, and it's salutary to think of children as being months old, you haven't gained an awful lot of life experience and resilience to deal with things. So the impact for me isn't so much about on education, because education you can do at any point in life. I mean, I think probably all of us listening today are still learning. It's about what's happened in those very small lengths of time these children have been alive, what they've witnessed, what they've seen, what they've noticed from their families, the stress, what they've picked up from social media, things they've seen, television stuff they've seen. And I think it's about routines, security, and transitions. I don't know about how it is across the world, but certainly in England, we are very keen on filling gaps in education. I think the point is filling gaps in helping those children to go through what we've all been through, and we've all been impacted. I was visiting a nursery on Thursday where they still wanted me to wear a mask in the rooms. And those children had never met me before, but they are used to now people talking to them with their faces covered. And I find that fascinating, because the whole reason that we talk about language and communication is our mouths, isn't it? And I know our eyes say a lot, and obviously you can see my hands say a lot. But for me, the impact has been on those children's lived experiences. Education we can fit in another time. And we're not worried about, well, a lot of people are worried about, but in my head, we shouldn't be worried about phonics and reading, writing and arithmetic. We should be thinking about how those children see the world. So not obsessing about education, but thinking about routines, transitions and resilience, the coping strategies.
Well, you know what? In India, because our schools are not open, I was just thinking few weeks back that, okay, even if it is with masks for children and for teacher, can we just have that thing come back to normalcy? But you know what? I did not even think of when children,
Yeah.
especially in the early years, are going to see us like that, because what we want them to see is our facial expressions and to see how our lip movement is, right? But then looking at us where we are right now, for me personally, being in India, I was thinking, okay, like let it at least open, right? That's my thought
Well,
process.
this is what's happened in England, of course. We've become open completely.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I did a bit of work where I had to fly to Jersey, which is a Channel Island off the south of England, in June. And I was on a plane, and of course I had to wear a mask, as did everyone. And in the seat in front of me, there was a newborn baby with its mum and dad. And the mum kept taking her mask down to talk to the newborn in her arms. And I kept thinking, wow, this is a powerful thing, isn't it? So as I say, for me, it's not about education. It's about all of us learning about dealing with the situation and supporting each other, particularly the young people who haven't had the life experience to get it.
Yes, and my heart goes out to all those children who just start their school this year, for early years especially. For them, online is the school. They don't know what a school building looks like, let alone to know how it is to be among other children, have that love from the teacher or a good morning from the teacher or a hug. And I'm not sure when that will happen, right? That whole cuddling part where the teacher is welcoming the children is like suddenly a kind of a thing of the past.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, I think we have a lot to add on. Yes, Julie, you have something to say about this?
I have, yes. So, hi, I'm from the UK as well. So it's lovely to connect. And I think we should do this a lot more. I own two nurseries, two extending nurseries. And I have absolutely 100% behind you, which is why we set up, Mandy and myself, Mini Minds Matters UK. And during COVID, we remained open. I'm sorry, my family are just on the way out, so if it's noisy, I do apologise. So on the basically, we opened all year round, and I set up a growth mindset curriculum, and that's what I focused on: well-being, resilience, building relationships. But my staff, we chose not to wear masks because for that reason, that we wanted our children to see our facial expressions, to be able to respond, because communication is essential, and that's non-verbal as well as verbal. So absolutely agree with what Sue said.
Thank you, Julie. I move to Alice. Oh, sorry, Shamila, do you want to add something?
Sorry, you just had to put my little word in there. So I'm all the way from Dubai. I'm Shamila, and here in nurseries, the teachers don't have a choice but to wear their masks. So, and even if we're wearing the face shield, it's only if we're at a particular distance from the children. So we had to make that extra effort on expressions through eyes, through hand gestures. The masks are an absolute must, even with parents coming in. And I often found my discussions with the baby room teachers, the infant teachers, that we are so used to using our mouth expressions, facial expressions, surprise looks and so on. And now we've got to make that extra effort with our eyes and hands, and they are doing all the communication.
Learning a whole new language, isn't it?
It is completely. And we'd actually have sessions on what kind of expressions we'll be using instead of focusing on what's behind the mask. We need to focus on what's happening up here and here. And children, the funny thing that I've realized is babies now are born accustomed to that. They know that they need to look at the eyes, and that, if you go back years, if a parent or an adult came across a baby with a mask, it would scare children. And it doesn't scare them. It's like they know, and they've kind of adapted to this, so they're expecting these masks to be there.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yes. Wow. I go to Alice. Alice, what is your take of how the last 1.5 years, 2 years have shaped up? What is the impact on social emotional development of children? And do you want to add to what's already brewing here?
Hi, I'm Alice. I'm actually from the UK, but I live in New Zealand. I've been living in New Zealand for 4 years now. I'm from Manchester. And I'm an early years and primary school teacher, and I run my own business called Play-Led Places, where I train teachers and EC teachers about play. So I love what the conversation is really, really interesting. I love how Sue brought up, it's not about the education, it's children's social and emotional development, which is, that's always key as well in early years as well, but even more so the pandemic has highlighted that. And I was thinking about something today, actually. These the children now, they've gone through something which we have not necessarily gone through when we were children. So it's, you know, it's an important thing, and I'm trying to always relate to that as much as I can, because I think about when I was a little girl, if I had gone through, you know, oh, you can't go to school today, you can't see your teacher, and I was quite a nervous child anyway. Like, you know, settling to school took a bit of time for me. That would have really thrown me, I think, and, you know, really brought me a lot of anxiety. And, you know, that's what I'm always trying to think, like, you know, the children have gone through something which I never had to go through before when I was a child, you know, so we've got to be really sensitive about this. And in relation to the maths, when you were talking just then, I also thought the distancing, because you know how, I don't know any about anywhere else in the world, but in New Zealand, you know, keep your 2-meter distance. And we have to try and talk about children with that, but it's very hard. But, you know, that's also kind of a barrier to communication, because when you meet someone, you're instantly thinking, step back, you know, and that's the first thing you're thinking about, instead of just, you know, welcoming, saying hello and having a conversation. So, you know, there's all these vital things to consider. And in terms of, you know, what the question asked about what they've missed out, I related it back to independence, relationships, and physical skills. And in independence, I was thinking about, you know, the routine has been disturbed for some children, like that whole getting up, getting ready for school, you know, packing their own bag, or their earlier setting. Like, that's a really big thing for children. You know, they get that real pride in themselves when they've mastered that. But of course, when you're at home all the time, you're not necessarily doing that much. So that's a really big important factor, because these are vital life skills. And then I was thinking about social skills when the children play, because there are less children to play with at home, because at school they've got more. You know, they're missing out on these amazing sort of sharing opportunities and learning to problem solve with their friends. And, you know, their fallouts when they play is actually really important life skills, because they're learning to share, negotiate, problem solve. You know, obviously with a teacher help sometimes, but then understanding other children's views. And so it's just all these amazing things to think about. So yeah, a really good question.
All right, thank you so much, Alice. And now I move on to Azura. Azura, why don't you introduce yourself and what do you want to talk about on this topic?
Hi, everyone. Sure. I want to start by thanking you, especially Simran and Dr. Bazavi, for inviting all of us here, and to say how thrilled I am to get to learn from and listen from all other panelists, some are new, some are like very familiar faces here. Okay, I am Azura, Head of Early Childhood Education Program in Veritas University College, Malaysia. I've been in the industry for about 20 years, okay, lecturing for about 15 years. I am handling early childhood education program, so I'm more on the structure of the ECE itself, like on the education part, you know, of the teachers. Okay, I design short course, professional certificate for teachers, and then now I am in the middle of designing online diploma and bachelor program for early childhood education. So I don't work directly with kids, but I am in this field of continuously, with all my effort and interest, trying to bring early childhood education, hopefully to the next level. All right, so I would like to touch about Dr. Su's mask. You know, I've been thinking lately about the mask, but I mean, like, everyone is wearing masks, and children are, I mean, like, now looking at us wearing a mask. It came to me the other day, what if the child thinks that a face is a private part because we need to cover? So it's something that we need to think about, you know, because we don't know what kids think. All right, so looking through into the pandemic and the education itself, I'll touch about some of the online learning for the preschool. So there's some, I look into 4 major perspectives. There's some social issues, not about kids socializing, but how do we really combat the inequalities during this crisis? Because preschool, I mean, I did do the online learning, online lessons, so, but not everyone getting the online learning, you know, because 100 million of students are affected globally. However, only 50% get the opportunity to continue their learning online. And then the second one is the pedagogical challenges. It's obvious, I mean, no teacher and instructors are ready to of the sudden change of the mode of teaching from face-to-face to online learning, but we all did it, okay. And then technology literacy, this is the aspect where we look into the capability of not only teachers or instructors, but the students as well, and then how everyone who is involved in this online learning harness technology for the teaching and learning process. And then the last one is a psychological dimension. So everyone in the education industry are equally impacted for the anxiety of not knowing the future. Okay, that is from the education side. However, when we really think and talk about early childhood education, we are talking about newborn up to 6 or 7 years of age, depending on where you are. Because for in Malaysia, it's up to 6 years old. Okay, well, I would say that this kid miss actually they miss more than a classroom. Okay, so because if you look at a child who has been in a school or child care, you know, I personally think it affects their emotions. Okay, I would say like overall, it's they miss social interaction, not entirely on the emotion. Okay, because if you look into the child who has been in childcare or preschool, yes, they do miss they miss the emotional part. But if you look into that, for babies who were born during this pandemic, I don't think they miss something they don't have. You know, they don't miss the interactions, you know. I mean, like, because they never like experience all that. But there's another factor to it, as we all know that the first 1,000 days of life are important, as it is a sensitive period. So such things as environmental factor, including maternal, mental, physical health, nutrition, stimulation, supportive caregiving can affect the infant brain. Sadly, studies have shown that children who were born during this pandemic show lower cognitive scores due to the lack of stimulations. So there are good reasons to be concerned about infancy and early child development during this time. And like so many other things, these risks will not be evenly distributed. So on the other hand, there's also studies shown that most babies will have the opportunity to thrive. So I guess this is where what really concerning me, the uncertainty and the need to find a proper technique to nurture these babies who soon will come to our childcare and preschool. So I think this is something that we really need to talk about.
That's a food for thought, because in probably a year's time, we will have these children who are being born during the pandemic coming to our schools, all right? And this is for them. I kind of agree with what you said, Azura, because they don't know what they're missing, but they have been in confines. More so because they were newborns in pandemic, they have been more in a very closed environment because parents have become. Even now, we know that the parents are a little overprotective these days, but these babies are coming from that overprotective environment, hopefully to the preschools in a year or a 2 years time, and making them socially and emotionally, providing them that platform to become socially and emotionally, nurtured. And all of those
I guess it's more for us to adapt to them rather than they need to adapt to us. We need to rethink our way of nurturing kids. I mean, like we've been too confined, you know, too straightforward in our thinking that it needs to be like this, it needs to be like that. But to me, it's like they are living in a new world. This is a new, I don't know what is it. Like it's a new era, and we need to adapt.
It's not new of new normal. I feel. I mean, at one point in time, we were talking about new normal. Now we are somewhere in between, where half the things are open, half are not, half people are in the mask, half are not, some are vaccinated, some are not. And then there are these protests, all right? And in midst of this, we are these educators and children fraternity, all right, trying to get, grip on all of these things and, do our teaching, learning, and meet those goals. Anyways, I was coming to you. Yes. Oh, please. Yes.
I just wanted to add as well, like we're all from different parts of the world, and we've all opened up in the different circumstances, or some of you have not opened up. So I think it's difficult as well to kind of understand what is normal and what is not normal, because we've kind of overcrossed each other, or we're still, you know, miles apart from each other. So it's difficult as early as educators to come on a common forum and say, we will do things in this way because we think it's right. But then if I now go to Australia and speak to someone from there, you'd say something completely different as to what you're having to deal with. So I think what we need to understand is everything is going to have to be tailor-made to where we are.
Sure.
There used to be a common normal. We all used to be under the same circumstances. Yes, curriculums differed, settings differed, things like that kind of were always a kind of combination of variety. But now I think because we've come along a way, we've all been affected by the pandemic in a different way. We've all come from different countries. Each country has a different governing body. Every education government has their own perspective on the way early years needs to be. So I think coming onto this forum and discussing what we're all going through as individual entities within ourselves, within a global situation, I think that's important for us to acknowledge as well, that none of us will be experiencing things the same way.
Yes, absolutely. But yet these kind of forums provide us a lot of vision of what's
Yes.
happening in each country.
So we learn from each other.
Yeah, and we take back the good practices, the best practices, or what worked. Maybe what worked for Dr. Catherine and Dr. Sue might work for me in some area, maybe not the whole thing. Like till date, because I'm from India and I'm not seeing these kindergartens opening, or even if there is a ray of hope, I'm so excited that I did not even think about this mask thing.
Yeah,
because
so you can see, I think you can see the stages. So your cells haven't opened at all yet. In the UK, you've opened with that mask, but in Dubai now, the UAE, in fact, we've opened, but we still have more constrictions, more restrictions. So we've still got the mask, we've still got the social distancing. So things are slowly kind of coming together, but we're still in separate zones.
As I said, it is new normal.
Yeah, for sure.
It is new normal. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Because it's like, we thought when it was new normal, that was like we were at home, we were locked down, we were yet smiling, we were coming to the grip of it. We adjusted, then things opened up. Then again, we had a lockdown.
Yeah.
Now we are somewhere in between, trying to figure it out, right?
True.
And yet we are opening schools, we are getting teachers back. Now I move on to Dr. Catherine. What do you want to add to this?
Well, thank you, Simran, and thank you everyone who's contributed so far to the panel discussion. It's been very interesting, and we've all raised points slightly different from each other. I want to pick up on something that Shamila and Azura have said about the birth to 2-year-old children, and you know, they're born into this pandemic. They don't know anything else. But what happens in 1 year's time when these children are 3 and they're 4 and they haven't had that grounding of learning how to interact with everybody? They haven't had to take turns, they haven't had to line up for things, they haven't had to build that sense of resilience because they've been relatively isolated. So what does this mean for these children as they move through their schooling career if they haven't had that same grounding? And I think it was Azura that said about the first 1,000 days. Well, there's also another report about the first 2,000 days, and that adds to that as well. And it talks about how important the grounding is in those first 5 years. So from my point of view, wherever we are in the world, I think relationships have been compromised. Relationships between children, relationships between adults, relationships between adult to adult. I think it's been compromised. And in saying that too, I know that a lot of people that I've spoken to across the world recently have talked about the shortage of staff in early childhood centres, so that people just cannot get staff. So many of the early childhood educators, the very skilled ones or the qualified or educated early childhood educators, have moved on to a different job because the centres closed down and they had to eat, so they had to go find another job, and they haven't come back to the profession. So someone told me the other day, this woman was in America, and she actually said that they're just getting anyone who can look after the children. They're just getting them into the centres so that there's enough people to manage the children, so the children can come to the centres. But it doesn't mean that the staff are highly qualified or highly educated. So what's that mean then for our quality programs in early childhood centres? Well, from my perspective, it means that the quality is going to have to suffer. So my question to everybody that's listening and everybody on the panel is really, have we gone backwards? You know how we've advocated in early childhood all of these years to be seen as a profession and to be seen as educators, not just carers. Remember, it was called child care, and then it went to child education and care. I'm wondering, because of all of this staff turnover and the lack of relationships and the lack of consistent availability of centres, I'm wondering if we have actually just stepped back 20 years and we are now back to childcare, which is a real shame, I think, for our early childhood profession and the early childhood sector as a whole across the world. So that's my question to everybody. Is that what you think is going to happen? You know, are we going to have to build again and start training people? Are we going to have to have like free training programs to upskill people so that we come back to those quality early childhood centres that we used to have, or we did have? And of course, I'm generalising. I know that there's still some fantastic places across the world and some very valuable centres that have maintained that quality. That's without question. But there's a lot of centres that are struggling around that. And then, of course, with that comes burnout of the educators who are there. And they're picking up the load and they're doing their best and they're trying to maintain a quality program. I've spoken to some directors of centres recently, and not only are they doing their job as the director of the centre, so all the paperwork and the enrolments and all of that, because they're short-staffed, they're also on the floor. So they're also working in the rooms with the children. So they're juggling two jobs pretty much just so that the centre stays open. So, how long can that continue? How long before they fall in a heap and they just can't do that anymore? So I think everything that everyone has said about the children and the impact on the children, the relationships, the families, the stress, the primary and secondary trauma, all of that is absolutely true. But we also need to look at the profession in a bigger picture, I think, and think, what's this done to the early childhood profession and our early childhood sector? And what are we going to do now as we move forward? And I think, Simran, you're going to get to that later in our session about what's next.
Yes, what's next? But how are we going to wean? You know what? There's so much being said about weaning back the students, but very less being done on weaning back the teachers, because teachers are the ones who are going to teach and be there in the classroom. And if they are stressed out and if they are not trained enough or given that space to absorb and get children back happily, it's going to be a kind of a chaotic affair even when we move forward, right? And I agree with the staff, and I also agree that is the staff coming with the qualification they already have, or have they added to the research of this last one and a half year? Because a lot has changed in one and a half year. All right, there have been a lot of techniques, there have been a lot of innovations, there have a lot of been new things in early child also. I think Julie is trying to add something to this.
Absolutely. It's so hard because you can hear what everybody's saying. You just want to like, yes or no, and shouting at the screen in my head. But actually, you're absolutely right. But we have to really look at trauma and trauma in the brain. And yes, we want to educate children. But if those children have experienced trauma, and we don't know the impact of this, we know they're resilient, but we don't. As adults, we're struggling to cope with this. We're trying to understand in our head, where are we now? Where are we going? And yes, you're right. That's why a lot of staff have left the sector, because the stress of what they've had to do. Remember, I don't know what's happened in other countries, but in the UK, I was on Good Morning Britain. I was fighting for equipment, for PPE, for my staff. I was fighting for the vaccine because we stayed open all the time. And we didn't social distance and we didn't have any equipment. But most of my staff, most of my parents were frontline workers. They were doctors, they were nurses dealing with COVID patients. And yet we were expected to work with no protection, no PPE, no look at the vaccine, nothing, no testing. We had nothing. And it has to come from the government. The respect for early years has to come high up. They have to start seeing us as important, and they don't. And that's where I feel. And do you know why I also feel? Is because we're women. The majority of this sector are women. Is that why we're not taken seriously? And it does frustrate me, but we have a lot to say. We're very knowledgeable and absolutely right. We need to get this right for these young children. But happy children learn.
Yeah, thank you,
I
Julie.
finished.
So now that we have spoken about what the last year has done, and we've taken a glimpse into what's next, but I want to talk about something very positive here. We know that the last 1.5 years has been catastrophic and it has been very hard, but I'm sure each one of us have some inspiring story, kind of a very short, a minute story to talk about what splendid happened where we tried ourselves or we witnessed one of our fellow educator trying not to get carried away with this whole pandemic, but trying to make sure that the childhood is not past. So are there any kind of inspiring stories, or what was it that kept your motivation level high? Because most of you, I have been interacting for last 1.5 years. And again, here we are in the new normal. So what kept us going in last 1.5 years? Like for me, doing more research, being, kind of doing upgrade on what I already knew, spreading that knowledge to my teachers when I was coaching them, training them. So for me, that kept my motivation level high. But what was it for you? So Dr. Sue, any inspiring story or any motivational thing that you would want to share?
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, the fact that I discovered Ecdf during the crisis was inspiring. Also, I have found, obviously, just like we're doing now, new ways of working, which have been inspiring. But I want to particularly share with you a lovely young lady that I was working with, and still am sometimes, who was in her first year of teaching when this all happened. And she asked me, could we do, because she was in her one form entry school, so she had no colleagues to talk to in the early years. And she found me and she said, could we have an hour or so a week just chatting like this for coaching and mentoring? And it inspired me, because although it was only her first year of teaching, she had built such a wonderful relationship. And I often refer to her practice now in the training that I do, because she was she still is a very reflective person. And she'd share photos with me and we'd chat. And the thing that particularly got me was this online learning that she was doing. Azura, you brought up a point about online learning just now. It's not easy with early years children. And I have seen some dreadful examples of people doing online learning with early years children. And I just think, have you never met a 3-year-old sometimes, or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old? Because it's not how it works. And my lovely friend Camilla really got it somehow about working with children online. And of course, as some of you may know, schools stayed open for the children of critical workers, so those in the front line, the nurses, etc. So Camilla was working with pretty much half her class in school and the other half at home. And very early on, it dawned on her, and this has come up as well, the relationship attachment type thing. Her early years class, the children at home were questioning why their friends could be at school and they couldn't. And the children at school were questioning, well, how is it that they're allowed to be at home and we're here? And they were all missing each other. So she was setting up all sorts of, okay, they couldn't mix together, but she was setting up all kinds of communication links. They were writing to each other. They were sharing stories. It was about the children working together as much as Camilla and her teaching assistant talking to the children. And instead of doing separate lessons for the children working at home, she was as much as possible having all the children in one big shared environment, which is not easy when you've got 15 children in a classroom and 15 children at home. But it was about making sure that everybody, as much as possible, could see what everybody else was doing. And I thought that was brilliant, actually, considering it was her first year of teaching, and the fact that everybody was involved, and things like she was getting the caretaker to read stories, the head teacher to read stories, the dinner ladies to read stories, so that the children who couldn't come into school could still see that school was still there. And I think that's a really important realization on her part. It wasn't just the teacher leading from the front and telling everyone what to do. It was about everybody remaining involved and that attachment. So for me, that was a huge inspiration. And I say this young lady in her first year of teaching, and we still work together a little bit now. She doesn't need me anymore. She didn't need me anyway, but it was a brilliant way to reflect on what was happening and to see what was happening within her environment. She also did all sorts of learning journals and sent things home for the children. All the children got cards and letters. And anyway, I could go on about Camilla for ages, but that was my bit of inspiration.
I hope she gets to listen to all the wonderful things you've said about her.
I ought to tell her, shouldn't I?
Yeah, absolutely. Because
yeah,
a lot of times we do appreciate people, but it is like they don't come to know about it. So I have started making an effort to tell that person that, you know what, look, I was talking about you, I was referring about you, and you're doing a good job. And
she knows I share lots of her photographs on my training.
That's a good one. Shamila, do you want to add anything to this? Let me come to you first. And do you want to add something to this? Any aspiring story, motivational thing that you came across about yourself or people that you were working with, or anything in general in last 1.5 years?
Sure. There's a couple of things I'd like to mention. The first is, I think Catherine mentioned earlier that having responsive relationships is really important. So adult to adult, adult to child, child to child, and it does buffer stress. It now helps us navigate our ups and downs, and having that interaction is really, really important. And I think when the onset of, and all of a sudden we were just closed and we get an email saying that's it, no more nursery, and this has happened in the UAE, I'm sure it happened around the world as well, though suddenly we were just confined to our homes. We weren't able to come into our classrooms to pick up things to support us through online learning. We had to improvise with things at home. So a lot of our educators felt rather lost and alone and isolated. I know we've spoken about the children feeling this way, and maybe parents as well, because of the circumstances they're dealing with at home. A lot of our educators went through a lot of stress and trauma at the same time. And I think what we expected, or naturally, was that suddenly the educators will jump into this role as online teachers and kind of do it as you know, the best possible way that we could imagine. Yet we've got to understand that these educators, early years educators, have never done online learning before. We didn't know what to expect either. So what we did was actually come together a lot. So we'd come online to Zoom meetings as many times as possible to kind of support each other through, share ideas. And then the next thing was to be able to present the ideas to our parents and children. We wanted to keep them feeling bay with all their feeling, you know, we didn't want them to have any negative feelings, to feel alone, to feel isolated. At the same time, we had to keep supporting each other. So it was a complete it was a collaboration of everything. It was us trying to support each other as educators, and then at the same time to support what was happening at home in these individual homes with our children who were once in a lively classroom, parents being able to come into classrooms, children being able to share toys and be in groups of 4 or 5 or more, lots of interaction taking place. Parents were able to communicate with each other physically, and then all of a sudden that had stopped. So how would we were able to kind of support the whole platform? So what I found was inspiring for myself as a nursery manager was to have these individual conversations, as you mentioned, through those mentoring and coaching sessions, worked wonders. Because when we sit down and speak to our teachers and say, or even our teacher assistants, because a lot of the time, I've got to add there that we forget, or we tend to forget the teacher assistants or the support staff and focus on the teachers. Yet I think the support staff, especially in UAE, suffered as well a bit more because they were on limited salaries. We had to cut salaries down. We had to be in particular ways. So we had to support each other through one-on-one mentoring, coaching. So I did arrange for myself to mentor and coach the teachers, and then the teachers to have discussion with their teacher assistants, and then all of us to come together to be able to provide a strong platform for the parents and the children at home. So that was something that was really inspiring for us. It actually made us quite a close and, you know, a team that were very close to each other, and we kind of got to know each other a bit more personally. The next thing I'd like to add, moving on from that, is we have a graduation ceremony for children every year, as I'm sure a lot of early years nurseries and early years learning centres do. And we didn't know on what platform. We were thinking of ideas. What can we do? How can we manage? We were a cluster of 3 nurseries at the time, so we all had our own ideas. So one of our nurseries decided to do a drive-by graduation. So parents would bring their children in their cars covered in balloons and happy graduation, and they would, and the front line, the educators would be in the line, obviously social distancing, waving, and they would go, it was like a drive-through, so they'd go past and wave at their teachers. So it was like a live event, and they'd get their certificates emailed home to them. So it was like a whole event in itself. Our ELC, what we did was a Zoom meeting graduation ceremony. So parents were asked to put their children in blue jeans and a white t-shirt. So everyone was wearing the same as you would do. They were given a YouTube video of how to do a graduation hat. So parents got involved making these graduation hats for the children. So they all had identical clothes on, kind of identical hats. And then the certificates were emailed home and printed off. So when the teacher said out the child's name, the parent would give them their certificates. So everyone came on like we are now. They got to meet each other. It was interactive, and they got to enjoy the graduation together. It was really, we did so many different events like that. We did sports day the same. There were so many different things that we did and came onto a platform. So I think from all of this, we got to know technology so much more and just connected through technology. So those are mine. Yeah.
I think that's wonderful, and especially those little children coming out in the car during that time and waiting for their teacher and seeing it in person was an amazing idea. You know, I know one of the schools did here, but that was for like the 10th graders and the 9th graders. But
yeah, so it was like a drive-by high. So
that's even good enough, and there was so much excitement that you must have added just for that.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing that with us. I move to Alice. Alice, do you want to add something to this?
Yeah, no, it's lovely to hear how we're talking about using, like, valuing the whole teaching family, and those examples then were so lovely, like the car drive-through. That's such a lovely idea, because you're still empowering and, you know, valuing the child. Still, like, they're still able to have their graduation, and you're just making it work, and that's a positive memory which the children will hold on to, and which is great. And then I love when you've got that teacher, how she got different staff members at the setting to read the story. And again, you know, because children often make relationships with not just their teacher in the school, they might make relationships with the dinner lady, lunchtime staff, or even caretaker. And you've got children in your class who might, you know, be like, oh, I want to see them online, you know. So it's just lovely how they did that. I thought that was really lovely. Going on with this idea, I feel my couple of examples kind of link, because one thing what inspired me was actually the community spirit here in New Zealand, because what happened last year was they did a bear hunt. Everyone got involved in the community, where they put teddy bears in their cars or in the bedroom windows for children to go and find with their families when they went for walks. And I just thought that was great, because the whole community, whether they were teachers or not, got involved with supporting, giving them a distraction, or at least giving, you know, supporting their imagination and keeping the fun for them. And it was just so lovely. And this year it's actually fairy doors. People are making like their own fairy doors out of lollipops and sticks and putting them by trees. And even I've been looking for them. It's really quite fun. So I just love how, you know, despite all this stress what's going on, people are still finding ways to support children and keep, the fun alive and the imagination. And it's just showing that care, which everyone does have for children. And then another sort of what I learned, or say how I was inspired, was actually from making the videos myself, because I'm not a technology person. Well, I wasn't before this pandemic, but I have learned a lot. And, of course, you've got to go from making teaching videos at home in your house with not the same setup you'd have in your play-based learning environment. So, I'm learning to be creative in my kitchen, making music with pots and pans. But what I noticed was, it helped my creativity, but the parents really got involved with it. And when we went back to school last year, they said, a few of them said to me, like, thank you so much, because it was great for us to see how you teach and like us to learn from that as well. And we can carry on these cool activities at home for them. So I found it really useful to help parents learn more about play as well, like how much children learn from play. So there was some really good stuff from this pandemic in lots of ways, bringing people together and people learning things as well. So yeah, I think.
Thank you for sharing. Azura, you want to add to this, please?
Yeah, I get, sorry, Julie want to say something?
Julie, do you wish to add something?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, absolutely amazing to hear all that. And it's so brilliant when you have passionate people around who, just want to make that difference to children. And, we did very similar things. We got children to set up a scene in their front garden of their favourite nursery rhyme, so that they again could act that out. And then everybody had to guess what that nursery rhyme was. And then the parent of the child will tell the story on Zoom, obviously, to all the children. And then we gave awards for the best themed garden and the best storytelling, and they got certificates for that, and that went down really well. We taught them dances, and then again had the dance of the week when they sent things in. Absolutely amazing. It's so good to hear this, honestly. Hearing the passion is what drives us, isn't it? And it's such a privilege to be part of this. So I just wanted to say that. So you're making me so happy.
Thank you so much. Azura, do you want to add any inspiring or motivational insight?
Yeah, I don't work directly with kids, but so I don't really see, I don't came across like many something like this, like in teaching myself, because I'm just teaching in university, so it's just like normal for all of us to turn into online learning. However, there is some engagement issue and all. But then I did came across I can see like a roadblocks that parents come to me that I don't know what to do with my kids at home. Teachers send me work, and I need to do it with my kids, so I don't know how to do it. So, but to me, it's like they seem clueless on how to handle their own kids. So I guess in this pandemic, it's everyone need to take charge of their kids, and the relationship between teachers and parents should be like nicely built, and the communications, because some parents are clueless. We are not like that supportive, because parents do have their own work and all. And for myself personally, I think I have lots of my optimistic moment. I mean, like Ecdf is a great platform. Like Dr. Sue, I came across during this pandemic as well, the Ecdf. Okay, so I guess that it's so important for us to pivot this historic crisis to a historic opportunity. We can all do like make bold things, discuss about something that can make a lasting, important changes for kids or families, things like that. Yeah.
Super, Azura. I kind of agree with you. This is the time for early years. They might have lost on the school time. I do agree, but the time that they got with their parents, all right, would compensate for the time they lost on the outside world. We won't be able to see the ratio or the proportion of how it went, but they got that quality time with parents, which we educators used to sit down with parents and say, hey, you know what, why don't you spend time reading to them, feeding them, or just spend time with the activity? And that happened. So that is one good thing happened, and maybe we can carry this forward. Yes, Alice.
No, I'd just like to add to that. I definitely agree, because my friends who have children have said the same. You know, they're not stuck in traffic coming home from work anymore, so they've got extra time now to play with their children. Like one of my best friends has been taking his son in the garage to do some tools and teach some woodwork.
Yeah.
And he said it's just a lovely time for him, and that's of course amazing skills, and of course the relationships as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good coming from it, like
Yes,
in this
because
way as
we're
well.
going towards the good now. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to go to Dr. Katz. Yes, Shamina, please.
Just want to add, when we started putting information together for our online activities, we actually put down a timetable. So we helped and supported parents because they had to do most of the activities at home. And our main purpose was we didn't want parents to feel like it was a burden. So they didn't have to go shopping for certain things. Because I think a lot of parents have the view that you'd have to go and buy these amazing tools and apparatus and equipment from these high-tech early years shops to have a good time. And I think what they've realized is what we did do is we put like a materials list together so parents were prepared a week in advance, and they were all things that you could find at home. So nothing was anything bought. It was shaving foam. It was, I don't know, we taught them how to make glue. We taught them how to make Play-Doh. So there was all these things that parents didn't know. They thought we went and bought Play-Doh. And I said, no, we make it at home. So we taught them how to make textured Play-Doh with different essence, different colors. And it was really intriguing for them. They felt like they'd gone through this whole learning process as well. Things that they thought they'd have to go and buy, they didn't have to. They could do all these activities with whatever was available at home. And that's what we kind of initiated in the classroom. Anyway, we always had, easy things to access, pebbles, and because we kind of had that radio way, so pebbles and sand and twigs and leaves. So, and they're like, oh, wow, really? We couldn't do an activity with just these? And said, yes, you can. So we were like educating, apart from supporting our staff members, entertaining our children, we were also educating our parents on what we do best in the classroom.
And we kind of walk the talk. We kept saying parents as partners in early years, right? And we were kind of, in our small ways, walking the talk. Dr. Katzen, sorry to keep you waiting that long, but what are your motivational or inspiring incidents that you want to talk to us about?
Oh, that's no problem, Simran. It's lovely to listen to what everyone's talking about. As well as my consultancy business in Australia, I also work at a university on a casual basis, and I'm an online lecturer, and which I love, and I just sort of do that, as a sideline sort of thing. And because everyone was working online as lecturing the pre-service teachers all of last year, and it's continued into this year, we have a monthly wine staff meeting. So it's late in the afternoon, we all have our glass of wine and we have a Zoom staff meeting and just talk about whatever we wanted to do. Now that we're able to get out a little bit more, we had a real live one today. We all met and had a glass of wine together and actually talked together today. And it's wonderful because we've learnt about each other over these last 18 months. And, we've been able to catch up with each other in person a couple of times, but, then we've had to go back to doing the wine o'clock meetings. And that's been a really great way to pull everybody together. And someone said that about, I'm sorry, I've forgotten, but someone was saying that about the staff meetings, the 12:30 staff meetings, and doing
Dr. Sue was saying,
yeah. So other things that I've seen, I've done quite a lot of presentations over this last 18 months or so, and one of the early ones at the beginning of last year, I was talking about all of the things that parents could put into place, just as Shamila was saying and Alice was saying about different ways to almost teach parents how to manage this homeschooling business that they now had to do. And one of the parents that was online said that she had her children do some artwork, and they did paintings, and they hung the paintings on the outside of their fence that faced the road, all across the front of their fence. And people would come by and just stop out as they were going for a walk. They'd stop out on the sidewalk or the footpath, and they'd talk to the children and ask them who were inside behind the fence. And they'd talk to the children and ask them about their paintings. And then other children and other families and other houses along the street started doing the thing. So up this street were all of these paintings. So they decided that they were going to have a street art gallery, and people could vote on the different paintings. And it was a real community thing, and no one was close to each other. Everyone stayed out on the road and just walked up the streets, and that everybody complied with all of the rules. But it brought the whole community together because the children were creating this artwork, and it was a real talking point. So that was a beautiful thing that I think that she shared, which is a lovely thing. I saw on the news here in Australia one time, teachers were going to children's houses if there was multiple children, and they were standing on the driveway and reading stories to the children. So the children would sit outside their front door, and the teachers would stand in the driveway and read a story. And then they'd get in the car, and then they'd go to another house, and then they'd do the same thing. So that's really creative and inventive, I thought. Other places that I was coaching in one of the other countries, I was doing some coaching work with, and they set up an outreach classroom. So it was actually in the park, and they put like little mats down that were spaced apart, and the children came to the park and they sat on their little mat, and the teacher read a story, and they did some music, and they did some activities, and all sorts of things with the children in the park, but socially distanced by sitting on their mat. And I thought, that's something we sort of came up with together. It's part of through the coaching, and I thought that was a nice way to bring the community together but still comply. And the teachers really got a lot out of it because they got to see their children, and the children got to see their teacher, and that was beautiful too. Another thing that was a bit of an issue was that parents were starting to feel a little bit ostracized, I guess, because when this is at my son's school actually, and parents were coming in, and they had to drop their children off at the front gate. When schools reopened, parents weren't allowed to bring the children into the classroom. They had to drop their children at the front gate, and then the teachers had to take them from there and up into their room, which meant that the parents didn't ever get into the children's classrooms. They didn't ever see the paintings hanging on the wall or any of the artwork. So the parents were starting to feel a little bit disconnected, and they didn't know what was going on in their classrooms. And children, what did you do today? Nothing. Who'd you play with? No one, so they weren't getting a lot of information. So the school decided that they were going to, what they called it, break down the fourth wall. So they invited parents to come in small groups on a particular day of the week and just stand outside the classroom and look in and see what was going on. And they were all masked up and socially distanced and all of that sort of thing, but they were at least allowed up into the classroom, and they could just stand there and observe. So they saw the teachers teaching the children, they saw the things that were up in the room. So at least they had a way to start a conversation with their children at the end of the day, because they sort of were part of it. So that sort of helped to bring that partnership. I think it was you, Simran, that said before about the partnerships between parents and schools and early learning centres. And so they tried to do that and bring them together. And I think at the moment, the way things are, because we have been removed from our classrooms a little bit, it's given us all an opportunity to rethink how we teach and how children learn. So I think we've been able to be a little creative and try different things. Some things work really well, some things don't. But I think over time, we're developing a hybrid way of teaching that will be different to what we have currently been using. So that's my thoughts.
Wow, I can't smile anymore. My cheeks are hurting, and I'm just blown away with all these amazing ideas. And I think I need to request Dr. Wasabi to give us one forum where we just talk about this new research and innovations. And there is so much that we can learn, and we can encourage all the educators that work with us to come onto this forum, because this is a kind of a coaching and a training platform on its own. So, I mean, thank you, Dr. Wasabi, but we need more of this one session. What we did is, with CCE Finland, is that we have our own online preschool. And we thought these small kids in India are so stuck at home, and they always hear that parents have the meeting. Parents are having this meeting and that meeting. So we told them, you know what, even we have a meeting. And they went like, yeah, yes. But in our meeting, we sing and dance. So we started naming our opening song as meeting song. And that made, the moment they just see those alphabets, they're ready. In one of the schools, just because Jack Hartman comes with these goggles and dances, the children go and fetch out the goggles. I mean, there was so much of excitement, and they go back, and the parent is talking about the meeting. The child says, I have a meeting as well. But in mine, my teacher says, I got to dance. Do you have that? So that was like another communication thing that we were opening up between parents and children to talk about, you know, what's happening in the class, and like the real classrooms. Shamila, I'll come to you for a minute, and then we go for the last segment. Yes, Shamila.
You know, I think everyone's going to agree with me. I'm just popping to say so much. As soon as you hear me, it's like, oh, I've got so much to say. I think just to round everything up, there's been so many innovative ideas that have been shared on the platform this month. I'm sure there's so many more stories. I just think that what Sue mentioned is like, as women, I think it was Julie, I can't remember. As women, we may be being undermined as early years educators, but after this era, I think it will be wrong for anyone to undermine any of our efforts, because we've all gone over and beyond to look after the well-being of our staff, each other, our children, our parents, and the community. So we have gone over and beyond. And I think we all need to give each other and our staff a big tap on the shoulder and a clap, because we've done amazing things.
We do the home front also. So we are doing that as well.
Yeah, as mum. So I remember sitting in the kitchen. I've got 4 children. Okay, so I know. So my son had to go to university during the pandemic, and I've got twins who are 15 and a little 9-year-old, and they all had online learning to do at the same time as me going into meetings and mentoring my staff to go on with it online. So my laptop used to be permanently on my kitchen table, because I would jump from kitchen to cooker to microwave to the children. They needed support with their online learning. And as mothers, we have the responsibility to be there for them. Yet we're also early years educators. So we have a responsibility to those children and parents who are looking towards us for support as well. So as early years educators and as women, we've done an amazing job. So well done to us all.
Because we're amazing multitask
we are.
people.
Women power. Fantastic. So well done, guys. Amazing.
But can I also say there are some very good male educators as well.
They are.
Who are still working in centres, and they're still doing their dad job as well as homeschooling, and so I think yes, we are amazing. But I think there's a lot of amazing men out there that are either supporting the women or they're doing the job themselves.
Yeah, sure. And I would want to thank to our families also, all of us who have been doing this research and upgrading ourselves, upscaling ourselves, being in the platforms like that. We have immense support from our family members. Could be children, could be husbands, could be dads, whoever it is coming together, because that's what, we thrive because of that. So yeah, this is like a thank you to
I think this era has supported us in all, has allowed us to understand the support we can give and the support we need to receive. I think it's been a two-way train for all of us. For our, as you mentioned, our husbands, they knew that we had to get on with what we had to get on with. They knew that they were also working from, we respected that they were working from home in their offices. Children had their own, so it was a huge collaboration. And the amount of home baking I did during the lockdown, and and that's when I taught my children how to cook as well. So it was a huge family event as well for us. So, professionally and personally, it has been a huge learning curve for us all.
Right.
My husband learned to cook during pandemic. He had to learn.
All right, so we're going to go to the wrap-up segment, and we will have our closing thoughts of what is our vision of weaning back children, parents, teachers, and our support staff. I remember that, Shamila. And how are we going to do that in the school environment, in the hybrid, because that's going to continue for a bit. So a minute each to all of us. Dr. Sue, your closing thoughts on how we will wean back.
A minute's not long enough.
Two.
It's been really interesting reflecting on everything that everybody said today. And obviously the word is hybrid, which is hugely important. We have a huge tension in England specifically at the moment, because the central government ploughed on with introducing reforms, despite the fact that for the best part of 2 years, nothing's been normal. So the biggest word I think that we need to reflect heavily on in the next hybrid world is the word assumptions. And I use this a lot in my training. The government in England is assuming a very great deal about what education in the early years looks like and what teachers in the early years look like. And I say teachers, I mean anyone who works in the sector, whether they're a qualified teacher status or not. And I get really concerned, and I said it at the beginning, that government is driving us into new phonics programs, new learning programs, new structured curriculums, and they're completely missing the point. And we have now teachers crying in training sessions because they know what they want to do, but they can't do it. So for me, weaning back students and teachers in all my work that I do is about understanding it's a hybrid world, but coming at curriculum, phonics, literacy, numeracy, whatever it is, in a very much out of the box way, forgive the plug, because it's about starting from the ground first and knowing what the families and the children are bringing to us. Arrange the provision and practice around you. And let me just quote quickly Lois Malaguzzi. I'm running over time, I know, but Lois Malaguzzi talks about working with the children that you receive, that you see in front of you, and not a preconceived vision of the child. So for me, it's very much about don't assume one size doesn't fit all. Was that quick enough?
Amazing. Amazing.
Because we're in a perfect storm. Everything's hitting us now, but somebody thinks that education should just still plow on.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Alice, your thoughts?
A minute is not long enough, but
It really
I'll do my
isn't.
best.
That's why I said 2, 3.
Yeah, going on from, no, Sue was right, you know, and I completely agree. Like, we need to focus on the things that really matter. And, you know, phonics, literacy, math, that can wait. You know, these children have been through something we've not been through before, you know, and what we need to do is allow them to process that, because if we don't, what's going to happen to them? Where are those feelings go? What they might have felt. And of course, everyone will agree with me, play is the best way for children to process things, and time. And, you know, I had children last year, after when we came out of the first lockdown, and they were doing some role play, and they had a shop that had a virus. And I thought, well, I let it happen because they're making sense of it. And, you know, and then we talked about it, and, you know, we're able to like bring some positive into it as well. And it was really interesting to sort of see them using play to make sense of what has happened to them. But we need to allow this, and as well, talking to them with circle time. I'm a massive fan of circle time. You know, sharing their thoughts, their feelings about it, you know, so that they can understand it more. You know, and I love circles as well, because everyone, you know, you turn taking, everyone can see each other, you're listening to everyone. So we need to focus more on this, like getting children to, you know, get all those feelings out of them. And one thing I think is really important, which is becoming quite important here in New Zealand, is the outdoors and nature, because children have spent, you know, a lot of time inside. You know, we don't know how much if they've got access to a back garden. Some children live in flats, and you know, nature's just, I mean, I love nature. It's one of the main reasons I love about New Zealand. There's so much nature around, and nature's got this beautiful way of healing us. You know, being outside around green, blue, all these beautiful colours, it really, you know, brings that smile on your face. I mean, there's been loads of studies with hospital patients, you know, how if they've got a room that has like a tree side view, they recover quicker. And, you know, I just think having more kind of learning outside, you know, there's so much learning, so many opportunities there for that. So that's kind of my 2 main points to sort of end. So thank you so much. Some amazing discussions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm a big fan of circle time too. My research mainly has been lately in that. So yeah, we'll connect offline on that, Alice. Good to know.
Definitely.
Yeah. Azura, your thoughts?
Okay, quick one. So the claustrophobic childhood, you know, we don't know the long-term effects yet. I mean, like we have to find it later on. So I guess, but we're gonna survive. So coming back to Dr. Cathy's point earlier, I think the most important is we have to look back into our program stability, teachers' credibility, and then how we need to maneuver the hybrid learning. And then what's important is I think we need to think what kind of support that we can provide each other, not only to teachers, but each other, like all of us here. I mean, like, yeah. So glad to be here and get to exchange and listen to each and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Azura. Shamila, on to you.
Yeah, just want to quickly mention, I think it's important before we go back into the full-fledged, in UAE we have, but I'm sure for you guys around the world, we need to understand, I think some children, each child would have had a different experience of the lockdown. I think it's really important for us to understand that. I mean, some of the children might have come out feeling safe and might have enjoyed that time at home. Yet we would have had some children who have gone through more traumatic experiences. They might have lost a loved one. They might have seen one of their loved ones being unwell. They might have had to relocate because of job losses for parents. They might have been, exposed to certain situations at home that are not as nice as we'd like to know about, So I think what we need to understand as educators is when we go back into normality or somewhat normality, that every child's experience of the pandemic would be slightly different. And I think we need to prepare our educators for that as well. So they need to be able to look for the cues. They need to be able to have conversations with parents, understand that each child's experience would have been different. So I think as a team of educators, we need to come together and understand, and we need to understand that maybe the educators that have come back into early year settings would have had different experiences as well. So I think we all need to be very empathetic towards the situation and towards each other. And I think that would help us move towards the normality that we aspire to achieve.
Surely. And I think a very, very big important thing is to be empathetic to yourself as well. While we are trying to aspire and do this and bring that effect. I recently did a workshop with teachers where I told them to start with your self-care so you could go to creativity. Because if you don't do that, if you're not at a happy place, you cannot be creative, at least not with the students, right? Dr. Cathy, your last views.
I've got a couple of different tacks. Sure. I want us to remember about the advocacy for the early childhood sector as a whole, because that includes the families, it includes the educators, the assistants, the directors, the children, and the community at large. So I want us to remember the effect of the pandemic on the sector. So to make it strong, we all need to advocate, I think, for the importance of early childhood. We've talked about the first 1,000 years, we've talked about 1,000 days, and the 2,000 days. So I think too, we need to ensure that we offer our educators opportunities to upskill, upgrade. And I'd really love to see governments or education departments offer free training for educators who feel that they need to upgrade so that we can have quality practice in every early learning centre across the world, and also have a pay parity. I think our pay needs to be higher, and I think that would keep more quality people in the industry. And I think these are really good, really big things that we all need to advocate for across the world. There's a lot of little fires burning across the world about changes in education and reform in education. So I'd love to see all of these little fires that are around the world to come together and make a great big fat bonfire, and we make some real change for education, particularly early childhood education. The other thing I want to talk about is the importance of allowing children to play, and Alice touched on this, but there's over 150 years of play research, so it can't be wrong, right? Like it's a real thing. So children learn through play. That's the way they process things that are going on. We talked tonight about primary and secondary trauma. That's the way they process that. They work it through role play. Now we need to bring back play in a bigger way. We need to advocate for play as well. And my business is called Future Strong Education, and I called it that because I think that for a future for our children, it needs to be based on a strong foundation. And I think play is the way to build that strong foundation, with quality educators supporting the children who become their coach and their facilitator of their learning.
Absolutely.
That's my last
so
words.
Well said. So well said. 150 years of research cannot be wrong. I couldn't agree more. Julie, last minute to you, please.
Just quickly, I really believe what you've said. I echo that. Bringing better pay for us, raise those standards, may start attracting some male workers then to the sector, because it's low pay, we don't have that. But more importantly, I introduced Mini Mindful Moments with Mandy Worsley, and our business is Mini Minds Matters UK. And that approach is all about processing what they've done, naming those feelings, understanding what regulation is, introducing meditation. But we've also brought in a wellbeing coach for our staff, because they also need to process what they've been through. And I think it is about that. It's about looking after everybody. And that wellbeing coach has started to support our families as well. So you're absolutely right. And it is about getting it right. Thank you.
Amazing. So, wow, what a wonderful, wonderful evening, afternoon or morning, or an event, as what you want to call it. We want one more. We definitely have a lot of ideas, a lot of things that have worked for us or are working for us. And if we could come back together and talk about what has worked, it can benefit so many of educators who would not probably join us at that moment, but at some point in time. My last 2 cents is that while we are getting into this whole hybrid mode, and when the children are coming back or not coming back, we need to allow them a lot of space to interact, all right, to express. Sometimes I spot educators being in so much of hurry to finish what they want to do for that day and just say goodbye. But you know what, now, as we have discussed, the phonics are not important, the shapes and colors are not important. These millennials know that. I think what they need is the space to express. Now, that could be through dialogue, that could be through music, that could be through art, like as simple as telling a child, how do you feel, and showing them various ways of depicting emotions on paper. And also, I think a space for parents to come back and talk. Or also, while we are going into this whole hybrid thing, how about the parents write a blog saying what was it for them to homeschool the children, or while they were with children, because that makes them reflect what it is for the teachers and educators when we're getting these children back. So a lot of communication channels can open through that, and we can go on and on about this. But thank you very much for joining us, and we will probably have a part 2 of this sometimes around the next new year, when maybe we are in new normal version 2 probably. So thank you one and all. And this is Simran Balani signing off from Ecdf Bangalore. Have a good morning, good evening, good night, and take care of yourself. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye. Bye, guys.